Trying to find the optimal angle. Don't you know?
It's hot in here.
I'm sorry to feel this way. Alright, so if you realize that you have a question that you want to ask, then please write it on the board. We'll look at Skew the Script practice number 1. Now, Nate, you asked, is there a different method for survey experiments? What do you mean?
I mean, like, alright, there was observational study. That's an experiment, and I forgot the other one.
Oh, be careful. An observational study is not an experiment.
Experiment.
Say there's experiments, there's observational studies, and there are sample surveys. Sample surveys are actually just a type of observational study. Okay, so an observational study, you observe something, a characteristic of interest, in its natural setting without influencing anything, right? And so a sample survey is just a special type of that where you ask survey questions to gather your data. Okay, but experiments are completely different, right? Okay, so what did I miss, Jaden? Straight up, honestly, I don't remember what you missed in the last 15 minutes. Something with experiments. We found out the results.
Well, yeah, that's all I wanted to know, honestly.
You want to know about the results?
Yeah.
Hey, you gotta go watch the video.
So I'm not going to anywhere because of that.
Yeah. Okay. That doesn't know.
Can you stop saying that?
No.
Uga is not gonna be a thing. So petty,
It's
like.
not the new thing. It is the Mr. Kenny thing. That's all there is to it.
No, it's
Okay.
not.
So, what is the DYU? So CYU is check your understanding. DYU is demonstrate your understanding.
Oh no.
You're good. So the DYU tomorrow will look very similar to what we had. I do know for sure, I'm still editing it some. There are some false statements where you have to identify how to fix those false statements, or basically show all of your understanding with those false statements and how to fix them. And a couple of us are about to start putting our cell phones up in the cell phone pocket. Caddy,
I was just checking the time.
Oh, that's a lot of like touching on of the screen if you just checking the time. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I have stuff, okay?
I have stuff too. It's called Teach You AP Statistics. So there'll be some of the false statements. There will be some AP style multiple choice, not super heavy on the AP style multiple choice, but they will be there. Some free response questions, things like that. I'll try to glance back in a minute before the end of class to give you more to remember, because I just don't remember everything off the top of my head. I will say this once again, there is a second progress check that I didn't want to throw on you at the last minute, but there is a progress check that is due tomorrow. So I didn't make it due tonight, but it's due tomorrow. If you do it before class tomorrow though, that will help you study, because remember at the end of the progress check, it tells you what you got right, what you got wrong, and so that way you can learn from it, and it even gives you some feedback if you get a question wrong. I'm trying to remember, also if there's a question that I notice a lot of us are missing, then I can talk about it during this time before the demonstrate your understanding. The demonstrate your understanding will be the end of tomorrow, so we will do some practice and review unless we finish everything today. We will also be doing some AP free response questions at some point, starting today or tomorrow. And then test, ideally, is next Tuesday, but we'll talk about it. Why not ideally? Because it's a long weekend?
Yeah.
Also
Yeah.
Tuesday, it might be a delay day because of weather.
I have heard that as well, but if it's a delay day, we will have fourth block still.
Isn't it Tuesday and Wednesday?
We'll find out.
This guy.
I thought it was
This
Tuesday
guy.
and Wednesday.
Listen,
So they both canceled.
Listen. We're going to do what we can to continue our learning even during this time. I get what you're saying. Let's look at Skew the Script practice number 1. And so let me see if I actually even have it open right now, because I don't think I do. Nope, I do. Alright, is it this one?
Yeah.
That you wanted to ask about? So AP Stats student Kira wants to compare 2 different strategies for playing a popular word guessing game. She gets 30 students who know how to play to come to a classroom during lunch and randomly assigns half of the students to use one strategy to play and the other half to use the other strategy. The average number of guesses needed to guess the word is computed for each group and compared. What are y'all thinking? Observational study or experiment?
Experiment.
Okay, what tells us experiment
She
here?
has different
Two different
treatments.
strategies.
So these are actually both really good things that I want us to notice. So she randomly assigns. As soon as I see that word, she's assigning, that makes me think of treatments, right? So the fact that she randomly assigns one to use one strategy, that's treatment 1. And then the other half to use the other strategy, that's treatment 2. And then we're going to be able to compare those results. Yeah, that's an experiment. And so she's trying to compare those two different strategies. Which one causes an increase or causes a better score? That's an experiment. Does that make sense?
Would number 2 be like the same situation?
So, ooh, that was too far. AP Stat student Andrew wants to see if there's a difference between playing a popular word guessing game in the morning or in the evening. He gets 15 students who played that morning to tell him the number of guesses they needed to guess the word. He then gets 15 students who will play that evening to email me the number of guesses they need after they play later. The average number of guesses needed to guess is computed for each group and compared. Yeah, and it talks about compared. What do y'all think?
Observational.
Why is this observational though?
Because she didn't like assign people to like play in a specific way. He just asked people who played in the morning / in the evening and like observed their results.
What do you think about that, Peter?
Okay.
So you agreement?
Yeah.
So again, we're not assigning to treatments, we are observing, right? Now I will make this note, this would give me good data. This is not going to give me good data. Anyone know why?
Response bias or not?
Maybe response bias.
You could.
I would just say because it's not random, it's convenient sampling, isn't it? And so I don't know that it's response bias. I don't know, because unless maybe they lie, and that's what we're thinking is they would
I'd
lie.
lie.
Yeah, I believe it's random. So maybe they would lie, but yeah, for me, it's more about that idea of like, it's convenient sampling. Is there any other bias that anyone can think of? Sprig, what were you going to say?
I was just saying the thing that they would maybe lie about.
Right, so that in that case, it could be response bias, right? Because she's not actually observing, they're just emailing the results, so maybe response bias. I would mostly focus on convenience and not random sampling. Okay, questions? Let's bring any other questions up before we continue with today's lesson. Reach out to Braden, make sure he watches this video because we're about to cover some of the, I won't say trickier, but more nuanced details in principles of experimental design, okay? So it's building on what we did yesterday, but it's a little nuanced in a couple of things. So, task today, we're going to wrap up principles of experiments. And I forgot that I had said I was going to do AP free response today. We'll see if we get there.
What is
And
AP for response?
so, literally free response questions from the AP exam.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't looking.
You know,
for
you
I
should-
might need to send you make copies later.
You should start a YouTube channel and upload these lectures.
I know, I should, shouldn't I?
No, but like,
Don't we have to like
For,
find
like-
waivers?
For like actual other students.
Yeah,
like,
maybe like
outside.
people who wanna like.
No,
Or
you
make-
could-
I don't think I'm that good, so yeah.
Oh,
So
come
you
on,
say what's
people-
up,
there's a market.
statisticians, right?
There is a market, but there's
Bad,
there's
though.
phenomenal educators out there already. If they want to watch it, they can watch it for free.
But maybe they like you better.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe they like the audience comments.
I do like the audience comments in here. Y'all are unique,
You can
especially
make.
Jaden.
That's mean.
You can make like a private.
Do you want to be like everybody else?
Oh,
Yes.
maybe.
Ew.
Make like a private like
Wanna
playlist
record.
and like upload all the videos on there so it's like easy access and like just make it to where like people can only access it like through like a specific link.
They gotta pay me for that link.
That's just called an OnlyFans.
You're not
You're not
That's
wrong.
what OnlyFans existed
Oh,
for
they're
originally.
paid.
It was like chefs like would like sell the recipes for money.
Anyways, coming back to learning statistics and not talking about OnlyFans in class.
On the video.
Our video is gonna go on YouTube. Okay, anyways. Okay, so remember, and so this is page 10 out of the notes that I developed or that we have. Not the skew the script stuff. We finished skew the scripts yesterday. If you want to continue working on those problems, so remember, there are check your understanding questions at the end of each little lesson that are based on the book. Those are great, check your understanding. If you haven't been doing those, I would highly recommend them. You have to do progress checks. I will put some videos up, or actually y'all can see the AP Classroom videos without me assigning them, right? Okay, so I only assigned them for the snow day because we had a snow day, but I would highly recommend watching some of those videos if you're struggling with a specific concept, or just watching what I post. But we got to talk about a couple of these things. So, what's the issue in experiments again? Or first off, let me start here. What's the goal of an experiment?
To reduce confounding variables and find the causation.
So half of that, so you jump to the second half of what I was going to ask, but what's just the goal? To establish or find causation, right? The whole goal of an experiment is to establish causation, so between an explanatory and a response variable. But Serena, what were you saying can prevent that?
Confounding.
Confounding, right? Confounding's the whole problem with experiments. And so, these are the ways that we reduce the effects of confounding. We have to have what in every experiment? Comparison. If there's not a comparison, we don't have a good experiment. We're going to talk about blinding in a second. We can directly control what?
The confounding variable.
The confounding variables, right? Now, there's a lot of confounding variables out there, right? You need to identify every confounding variable you can. For instance, when we were looking at the gender gap in STEM, one of the potentially confounding variables was GPA. If you got a higher GPA, you're probably going to pick that person. If you got someone with more experience, you're going to pick that person. So on the resume, they directly controlled those potentially confounding variables, right? They kept them exactly the same. That's direct control, keeping them the same. But can you control every confounding variable?
No.
So there's differences in the Tier 1 and Tier 2 research institutions. There's differences in just the people who read the resumes. And so what do we do to account for the confounding that just results from stuff like that?
Replication.
So random assignment and replication, right? We want to do lots of trials, replication, and we randomly assign the sample to treatments, okay? So that's what we talked about yesterday. The purpose of a control group, so again, comparison with a control group, that's just, the control group is comparison. Placebo, we didn't talk about this at all because in that experimental design, placebo was not valid to talk about. So what we've heard, I imagine some of us have heard about a placebo before. What do we mean by placebo?
You think like something's affecting you when it
There's no actual.
So the placebo effect is when you feel like something's affecting you, but it's not, right? So what is a placebo itself?
Like a sugar pill.
Okay, so like a sugar pill. So it is a sugar pill, that's something that the researcher is giving the individual, right? The experimental unit. So what is that thing we give experimental units called?
Treatment.
Okay, so the placebo is a treatment without a what? Say again. Without an effect, right? Or without, what we usually say is without an active ingredient. Because here's the thing, it could have an
Are
effect.
we cooking?
Huh?
It says active ingredient.
Like, isn't it what we go really things?
Yeah, are we making? Oh, no.
We're making bread,
I
we're
don't like
making bread.
ingredient.
We're
Okay,
actually
but
making
like, if we're talking about someone having an inhaler for asthma, then the active ingredient would be the medicine, right? But you could give someone an inhaler that doesn't actually have the medicine. So we call them active ingredients. There is another term, I'll look for it. Actually, let's just pull up the book to see the way the book says it. Yes, we can rephrase it.
Ingredient makes it sound like this.
Like, yeah, is this so serious?
What?
Like, ingredient makes, like.
I feel like
so-
it'll
it's
help
about
us
statistics.
remember it though.
Sure.
Statistics is serious.
I said the word ingredient, like, it makes it. I don't
Yeah, it
know.
makes it seem unserious.
It makes it like,
Why
I don't
are you
know
touching
how
it?
to describe it. It's just like,
It is big, it is.
Oh, I remember the picture.
I'm sorry you feel this way.
You know, like.
That's
okay,
not
We're so
apology.
considerate.
Yeah, I'm very considerate with myself.
Sometimes.
What'd you say?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm always considerate.
Right.
Right.
Oh, do I?
There we go. Hey, look at that language from the textbook.
Not like we can read it.
I know.
So.
You ready for this?
No.
A treatment with no active ingredient, but is otherwise like the other treatments. Come at me again. All
You're
right.
so sassy.
What?
I know. I'm very sassy. Don't get me wrong.
Apocalypse.
No.
Short man syndrome.
Oh.
So, Rose like Mr. Moore.
So,
Hey.
anyways, the reason why I will say this, the reason why we usually say active ingredient, though, legitimately, is because it deals with medicine, and the components of medicine are called ingredients. Okay? So, that's why, and like if you actually, and I guess I should have said this earlier, I think I actually have, because I packed it the other day. Let's see, I've got some nappers in here.
Drugs are allowed on the premises.
Oh.
Ooh.
What does it say right there under drug facts? What's that say?
Per ingredient.
In bold?
Purposes.
Dog, seriously?
Cocaine?
Oh, say that one more time, it's what?
Ben?
Active, what?
ingredient.
Oh, they're called active
You said it's a
ingredients.
I'm not saying it's the wrong
You said it says
word. I'm just saying it
Percocets.
doesn't feel right to me.
Oh, I'm sorry,
No,
I
we
gotta
know
consider
it
your
was
feelings better,
right.
okay,
Yeah,
so.
we know it's right. but
Oh,
we
okay,
can't
I got you.
right
Anyways, we
now.
gotta get back to this because we gotta finish experiments. But no, I mean like it's a treatment without an active ingredient. Now I will say I like this. It's otherwise like the other treatments, because if I tell someone, hey, I'm not gonna give you an inhaler, then they know they're not gonna get the inhaler, right?
Indeed.
Indeed. But if I want to test, is it something in their brain psychologically that's helping them calm down, or is it actually the medicine? Then I need to give them an inhaler so they think they're taking the inhaler. So the placebo is a treatment that has no active ingredient, but is otherwise exactly like the treatments. Okay. So there are things where your mind plays an important part. Legitimately. Sometimes just taking medicine makes you feel like you're getting better. Eating certain foods makes you feel healthier, and so your body goes through these effects. Okay? Alright, so placebo effect. So one thing we always need to check for is a placebo effect. Now, what we really need to talk about though is a blinding experiment. Okay? The blinding experiment is a really, really important component of experimental design, or principle of experimental design. So what do we mean by blinding in an experiment?
Like they don't know that they're
The subject doesn't know what they're
The
doing.
person can
Treatment they're taking.
Now, you said the subject doesn't know the treatments, right? Does
No.
blinding always have to be the subject?
No.
What could it be?
The researcher.
The researcher, right? So it could be the researcher, it could be the subject. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever seen a key?
Is it like a singular key or like?
Like it's like a single key.
You were sitting over here, weren't you?
Yeah. I was sitting over there.
I don't see anything. No one sat over there. Sorry, I don't know where it is. I'll keep an eye out for it though. Who do you have right now so I can email them in case we find it?
McDonald's.
Yeah, McDonald. Which one? Young or old? Young one. Thanks.
Mr. Kenny.
I said the same
You
thing.
should have just said Lucas.
That's what 90% of the school
You should have just
says.
said Lucas.
No,
and
everyone
Nathan.
says young or old.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, I feel like
Here's the thing, I feel weird about having students call teachers by their first name, so that's why I went young or
It's
old.
not necessarily calling me on your first name, it's just.
Oh.
I've heard someone say white and black McDonald before. Based on their hair.
That's
There's a
crazy.
black McDonald?
Oh.
No.
Anyways,
No,
but I hear, okay, so blinding, single blind can either be that the subject, the experimental unit, well I guess subject, the subject doesn't know their treatment. It could be, or it could be the researcher doesn't know the treatment that the subject is getting. So for instance, and the reason why, so let's say it this way, so either subject or researcher doesn't know the treatment they receive. Okay? So either the subject or the researcher doesn't know the treatment that the subject receives. So what could be a case, can anyone think of a case, let me say it that way, where the researcher might not know what treatment the subject is receiving, or why we might want that, but the subject would know?
So that,
Give us a hint.
Maybe so they don't treat the subject differently if they have to interact with them.
So one, we might want the researcher to not know so they don't interact or score the subject differently, right?
yeah, they might already have like biases, like if you're like testing like, well, people with this disorder versus people without this disorder, and this, like you tell the researcher that, the researcher is going to think, oh, well, from what I know about people with that disorder, and they're going to input that, like that's already going to be in their head.
And it could also be, and I will say this, it could be something other than the researcher, it could be the person just collecting the data, because someone has to know, right? And so the researcher could know, but the person collecting the data doesn't know. But how about this example? If you're testing the effectiveness of a new medicine on weight loss, right? One, you probably would want to, what'd you say?
We said okay.
Yeah, you probably want to test that against other medicines, right? But what's another way that people can go through weight loss?
Diet.
Dieting or working out, right? Like those are things that you can change. Now, in the case of taking the medicine versus dieting, can you really hide it from the subject if they're taking the medicine or if they're dieting?
No.
No. Can you hide it from them if they're dieting or working out or doing both?
No.
You can't really hide that, right? But could you hide that from the researcher so that they are not biased in the way that they score the data or have response bias there?
Is that just based
Or
like
measurement bias.
in categorical? Because quantitative, like they just do it by the facts.
This reminds me of that.
Like if they score them like 1 to 10, then that's
Right, yeah, something like that. Now granted, in assessing somebody 1 to 10, just how they look or feel health-wise, you can turn that into a quantitative variable. And so it is important to recognize that, okay, even though you could think of it as them categorizing, they could also be making it quantitative as well. Because if they average those numbers, that becomes quantitative.
yeah. But then what if they had to like test like if they had like good, bad, okay?
That would definitely
Yeah.
be
categorical.
Yeah.
So is it purely just categorical if it's like the researcher being blind?
No, there's other things. It's like a lot of medical
Okay.
stuff. I'll be honest, I don't know the ins and outs of the medical industry. I should probably look into that more. But there are times when it can be quantitative as well. Okay, that's a good thought, good question. Yeah.
There's a really good, I don't know if any of you have ever seen Grey's Anatomy.
Yes.
There's a good episode that kind of explains the importance, and it was in a quantitative stance. They were trying to cure Alzheimer's, placebo versus non-placebo. The researcher couldn't know, but they were comparing different levels of whatever, like blood or whatever. So that was quantitative, right? Like you're not categorizing blood, it's levels. So it can be both ways, it doesn't have to be.
But then you're also putting it in like a good or bad.
You could eventually, but like
Yeah.
certain blood levels, you would directly compare the quantitative measure. Now, you would probably also have to include a categorical component of like what level of dementia they're at. So I will say it's quite possible. That's a good thought. I'm not 100% sure. Okay.
What's a double blind?
So yeah, what would double blind be?
Both.
When neither know the treatments they're receiving, right? And again, the researcher overall would actually have to know. However, the person scoring or the person collecting the data doesn't know. So maybe that's a better way to say it than researcher. Either the subject or person collecting the data doesn't know. Because the ultimate researcher who's looking at the data has to eventually know. You blind the data. Actually, I say that. I'm in a study at UA right now for the program I'm in, and they collect data, and there is almost like a mediator who collects data from us, the teachers, and then blinds that data so that the principal researcher doesn't know who that data is. Because he has relationships with all of us, so like there might be personal biases in the way that he writes about that data. So, and I will say that there is actually quantitative data associated with that as well that he's analyzing.
What study where are you in?
So I'm in a program, an NSF grant, National Science Foundation grant, called A+ in Math. It has a whole bunch of letters, whatever, but it's been we're in our 5th or final year. The design was to try to train up and develop teacher leaders in the Tuscaloosa city and county school systems. And so like, you'll see probably sometime later this semester, someone will come in and do an observation or two of me teaching. And so like, there will be scores associated with that, and there's certain data that they've collected from me, and they'll pair that data, but I'm blinded using a unique identifier code.
Is that part of the reason you film?
No, I mean, I actually started filming the year COVID hit to help students who needed the extra resources because they had COVID or whatever. Actually, I did start recording that year also for what's called National Board Certification, and so I just kept it going because it helps students.
Yeah, I was about to say, please don't send that to research. I don't think anybody
They're not sending
I
that
don't
to the
think
research.
anybody
Okay.
wants
What
to
are you
hear
collecting
that.
on you?
Say again?
What type of data are they even collecting on you?
I mean, like my National Board Certification observations, there's something called the MCOP that they developed at the university that is some kind of classroom observation protocol, different things like that. But anyways, and then they do survey questions for me at the end of each academic year.
You know, you really ought to get one of those like cameras that hang from.
So Sanaya, what was your question?
Yeah, I'll be about to ask the same thing. Can you reset the definition for double blind?
Both subject,
So it's both, not either.
right, that's why it's double blind. Both subject
Yeah.
and data collector.
Can you use both neither and nor in the same thing back there?
Neither nor.
Yeah, those.
Yeah, sure. Neither subject, that would be better.
Too late now.
Neither subject nor data collector. No,
Close enough.
Neither, no,
Close enough.
too many.
no, the
Oh, so you're not.
treatment assignment. Okay.
You should have known that. Don't you have like a 5.3 GPA?
So why?
I wish.
Clock. Oh.
So why is blindness important? What's that going to do?
It can prevent bias.
It can prevent biases, but in the case, and so be careful, not the statistical bias, but researcher bias, right? Or human bias, even subject bias, to reduce the effects of what? Confounding, right? So be careful with that term bias and biases in statistics, right? Because there's the bias that results from unrepresentative sampling, but then we're talking about the biases or personal feelings of a researcher confounding. Huh?
Is that biases? Is that specific spelling?
Well, biases is biases, but why is blindness important? Let's just focus on the idea that it reduces confounding.
You know which definition came first?
No idea.
The chicken or the egg?
I would assume one is based on.
I would honestly assume the statistics one came second because statistics is a fairly young science.
If I'm talking about human biases,
Mm-hmm.
is it okay if I talk about them and just specify like human?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be fun. Okay, so we already talked through all this, right? How do we randomly assign? What does it mean to control other variables? Replication. So I just want to point out this summary. So notice this is at the end of the check your understanding number 5. So we have a few more practice problems. Remember, I only use the odd problems so that you can then go in and look at the answer key that's in the book that I uploaded to Schoology. But the summary with all this is, with comparison, blinding, random assignment, control of other variables, and replication, each treatment group should be nearly identical, and the effects of other variables should be the same in each group. That's reducing the effects of confounding, right? So all of this is the idea of reducing confounding. Now those potentially confounding variables are no longer in one group or the other, they are equally spread out, right? And so it's not that confounding variable that's affecting our results. Now we can make cause and effect conclusions. Yes, ma'am?
So like with observational study, would you say that's bias, the bias word is with that, and then with this, that reduces confounding?
100%, right? Because remember, observational study is all about making a inference from the sample to the population. But if my data is, if my sample does not represent the population, if it is biased, then I don't make good predictions. With an experiment, I want cause and effect, but if I have a confounding variable, then my cause and effect is not accurate. So we reduce confounding in experiments, we reduce bias in observational studies. Excellent summary there.
Do those people outside the classroom make it bad or anything there? Know what I'm talking about?
Oh, the one blind paper plane?
That's for physics.
Yeah.
Dude, it was so annoying. They were so loud.
Lots of
I was
paper
lost.
planes.
Okay. Alright, Lonnie, you good? Sanaya, you good? Everybody good? Alright, so here's the last real thing. And so in the notes that I decided to throw out a little bit and change, they did this caffeine experiment. And so I'll talk about some of the elements of that in a minute, but this is the last real major element for the principles of study design, okay? Or of experiment design. So right here, we have two different situations, right? Where someone was given caffeine versus not given caffeine. And I think it was something about the change in their pulse rates, right? So did your heart rate change when you were not given caffeine versus did your heart rate change when you were given caffeine? So first off, is there currently evidence in this set of data that, which is what page, I didn't put it up there, page 11 maybe? Page 10 or 11? Does that sound right in the notes? Yep.
11.
Page 11, thank you. Is there evidence right here that drinking or consuming caffeine increases your heart rate?
I can't
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah.
Why do you say yes, Jaden?
Well, because we can look at it and we can see that all the points for caffeine, or the mean is much higher, but also the bottommost point of caffeine is at 0. So
Okay.
it doesn't really like decrease it.
Okay, so there's no evidence that it's decreasing, but I do like, and I want to point this out, what Jaden is saying is the mean for that change when you consume caffeine, is it higher than the mean when you do not consume caffeine?
Yeah.
Yes. So is there evidence, and I need y'all to hear me on this because I'm about to compare this to another term that I know you've seen and we need to clearly understand. So is there evidence that the caffeine increases your heart rate more than not taking caffeine?
Yeah.
Is there evidence?
Yeah.
It's higher, right? So is there evidence?
Yeah.
Yes. But here's the question. But is it enough?
No.
And so in statistics,
Statistically significant.
that's the idea of statistically significant evidence. If there is enough evidence, so hear me clearly on this, if there is enough evidence to say yes, then we will say it's statistically significant. We will learn about statistical significance in the second half of this course. So after spring break is when we're really going to dive into determining if something is statistically significant. But just looking here, the question, but is it enough evidence? And so the question is, there's two different explanations. Either caffeine increases heart rate, or this difference happened by chance alone. It was random. There wasn't actually a difference, it just happened by chance alone. And that's what we're going to see in statistics consistently. Is is there enough evidence to say, yep, caffeine is increasing the heart rate, or could that difference have happened by chance alone? Because what else could explain your increased heart rate besides drinking caffeine?
Placebo.
Placebo effect, maybe. What else?
Just drinking.
Diabetes. Just drinking something could cause that. What about just being in an experiment and having the excitement, the jitters of, oh, I'm in an experiment. I know we all feel that way, right, Jaden?
Yeah, maybe they're not blind and, they're like, ooh, I get to be the caffeine people instead.
And so maybe it's that, right? So these ideas come about. So is there enough evidence, or could that difference happen by chance alone? Well, again, we want to establish cause and effect, right? And so one thing to note here, so by the way, sorry, I should have put it here. What are the two explanations for this evidence? Caffeine increases the heart rate, or that difference happened by chance alone.
You just ruined my note page.
Oh no, my name's Serena. You're ruining my note page.
So sassy. Sassy
Y'all act like you haven't known me for 2 or 3 years, and I'm different amounts of sassy than I normally am. Okay, you're right. I am a little bit more sassy in here. This just means I'm more comfortable in here. Oh no. All right. So,
I forgot to ask a question on the board.
what's your question?
It's too late now. How come whenever we ask good questions, you don't give us candy like you do your regular classes?
You give her.
You
Oh,
gave us
good
candy?
questions, good question.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I'm
Well,
trying
we
to
ask questions all the
incentivize
time.
them to ask questions.
Okay, we need.
Y'all are just
incentives.
already good at asking
We need
questions.
incentives.
Okay,
We
so
need
we don't get a
incentives.
reward.
Okay,
for
wait, I'll go
asking
client.
crazy questions.
Here's the thing I will say. If I gave out a piece of candy every time one of y'all asked a good question, I would run out of candy in a couple of weeks.
Nuh-uh.
So y'all are gonna have to up it. You're gonna have to not just ask me good questions, you're gonna have to ask me excellent
What if we
questions.
follow the
What if we don't ask questions and we
We'll
go
go
on strike?
back.
Let's go on strike
Alright.
already.
We're having a
Hey,
meeting. False scarcity
So
we're
right here, hey, ooga booga.
We forced
Right here,
scarcity.
okay? So how do we determine if the evidence is convincing? This is what we're studying in the second half of the class called inferential statistics. Okay? So there are descriptive statistics and then there's inferential statistics. Statistics that help us make inferences. Okay? So we're going to get there. Just be aware, we're not there yet.
Are we not gonna talk about it?
What?
About if we think it's convincing?
I don't think we need to.
Or we should
know
wait.
the definition yet.
We're going to wait because we need to know the statistical method to determine.
Does it have to do with like the percent chance and the number of trials? Or the percent change in the number of trials?
But you have to learn how to calculate that probability with p-values and normal distributions and z-scores and confidence intervals and all that other stuff.
Isn't there a confidence?
Say again.
Do you use R with them?
We do not use R because it's not allowed on the AP exam.
What is R?
R is a statistical software that is literally the best there is. I actually don't even know it, but I am starting to learn it. So it's really, really good stuff. Anyways, go ahead.
Doesn't it have to be, for it to
I
be,
don't know how to write a G.
for it to be like statistically significant or something, or convincing, doesn't it have to be like less than 0.05?
It doesn't have to
Something
be,
like that.
but a lot of times, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Anyways, so right here, and we'll talk more about that later, but right here, what I would also point out is in this experiment, they did one situation where people were allowed to take a variable amount of caffeine. Right here, they directly controlled and everyone took the same amount of caffeine. What did that do when they directly controlled for the amount of caffeine?
Everybody were.
This reduces the spread, right? Notice, does that give me more or less evidence, do you think? It'll give me more evidence that caffeine is increasing the heart rate. So this is where experimental design is important. Like when we get into those inferential statistics, we have to know how to design our experiments so that we have less variability, less spread. Notice the means are actually exactly the same. But by reducing that spread, it increases my evidence, right, that caffeine is increasing the heart rate. Does that make sense?
So like, why is the spread on like the first one for people with no caffeine like so much better than the?
I'll be
Is that
honest,
Is
that
that
I
just
don't
like
know.
chance?
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? Differences can happen by chance alone.
Okay.
Yeah, so good question. Not excellent, but good.
Oh, okay.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
okay, you don't have to rank our questions.
Yeah, this is annoying.
Well, I know Serena's gonna be like, Where's my candy?
I did not sound like that.
That's what it sounds like in my head. So, what does it mean if the results of an experiment are statistically significant? So I do want you to see what it actually says in the book, because this is really good
I just
phrasing.
looking over there, you mentioned OnlyFans.
Okay. So y'all are already supposed to have read about this, but it is in the last section of the book.
Where no those real books.
Wait, what are we supposed to be reading?
I'm scrolling there.
So, did you ever get emailed hinting about that?
Skinny Pop.
Can you let the, Peter, can you open the door, please?
Good, Peter.
Oh my gosh, here we go.
Okay, baggy jeans. Hold on, do the thing.
So, sorry. Hey guys, one thing I want to remind you of is this. The idea also is different samples are going to be variable, right? Sampling variability refers to the fact that different random samples of the same size from the same population produce different estimates, right? So, is that difference due to a true difference, or is it random chance? That's the question we're always going to be asking. Is that a big enough difference to say, oh yeah, that's the thing that happened, or it was by chance alone? And so when we say statistically significant, there we go. When the observed results of a study are too unusual to be explained by chance alone, the results are statistically significant. That is a foundational piece that I need you to hold on to and write that definition down, read more around that, because if their results are not statistically significant, then I cannot establish cause and effect. If they're not statistically significant, then I cannot explain differences in ideas. So it is important that we understand statistical significance.
When I say this, don't take offense, but can we all write before you switch it?
What does it look like I'm doing? Stop staring at me and write it.
Mind you, I'm almost done, so don't do that. I'm just saying.
8.
If you notice, no offense, I wait
It's
till
gonna be-
90% of the classroom's done, just this one person names
Mind
tonight.
you,
It's
there's only 9
usually
people in here.
last
so-
one done.
That's not true. Actually.
Actually, when we don't have those cell phones in our hands, we usually talk stuff.
No, that's, I agree, but in this case, that's not true. Because when it comes to writing, I actually don't be on my phone. I just be on the phone when you gotta get your rants.
That makes sense.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it does make sense, except my eyes have told a different story.
I'm so sorry, I've been telling you mine.
You should open your.
No, because you've been saying
All
something,
right,
I just.
I'm gonna get a second camera in here just to record you the whole class.
Okay, that's soccer, I
Get one
tell
on
you.
like the roof.
Like you know what I'm talking about? I
That way it's not in the way.
That's because you're talking and not writing. Let's go.
Okay.
Serena, is that camera in your way?
Yeah, I can't see.
Yeah, exactly. See, you put on the roof, so like it doesn't get in the way.
Jaden,
But
It ain't
it's
happening.
Like in the college classrooms where they.
I'm not-
To go to the computer.
I'm not rich enough for that. You wanna buy it, go for it.
Just get like a
tape
piece
it
of
to the roof
string.
and Connect the wire to
This
it.
is so, he's getting a grant.
Yeah, you're getting a grant.
Oh, yeah.
He's the money on the camera.
That's not what I'm getting. I'm not getting money for a camera.
What are you getting
You
money
like
for?
Big
It's not
Brother?
yourself, right?
Big Brother.
I'm on the last
he's on the
one.
top.
The last what?
Work.
Stays in the-
Alright, so you can do through homework 6 now.
Ugh, bro, I have 3 homework to do now.
Alright, so
I was like,
let's look at this context. This is the nuanced piece that we really need to pay attention to. Last major idea that we're going to hold on to for now is this idea of blocking. So let's say many students enroll in an SAT prep course. I need to rewrite it for ACT because I stole this from someone who
Oh.
the SAT matters.
Okay.
But 20 students who have taken the SAT once volunteered to participate in an experiment comparing online and classroom prep courses. So first off, is it okay that we have volunteers in this case?
No, boo.
Why not?
Well, I've made this argument a lot of times to a lot of people, but basically, people who sign up for a course are more likely to improve their score anyways, naturally.
Yeah, that's true, but we're only comparing those students. Like, we're not just comparing them to the natural population. I want you to notice,
I didn't read that.
is this an observational study or an experiment?
Experiment.
It's an experiment, so is it okay to have volunteers?
Yeah.
So remember, volunteers is only an issue for bias and observational studies, right?
Oh.
Please notice, like, this is not an issue about bias. Because we have volunteers, that's not an issue. I want you to think about most experiments. If you do a medical study, can you just randomly pick people from the population? No, you have to
You have to
use,
advertise it.
they advertise it, but they have to have what?
Money.
Volunteers?
Incentive.
Guys, so experiments, do not worry about bias. I mean, if we could randomly sample, that'd be awesome, but experiments don't care about bias, because we're not making an inference to the population, we're making an inference about cause and effect. Yes?
But what if you're testing on animals? Then you could randomly select.
It's true.
The
People get
IUC
upset about that stuff these
Yeah,
days.
the IUCAC.
So
Except
right
rats.
here, okay?
Rats are friends of the experiment.
So 20 students have taken the SAT ones, volunteered to participate in an experiment, comparing online and classroom prep courses. We're going to talk about some things in a second, but what I want you to do is I want you to go to your vertical surfaces, and I want you to write about how we could design a completely randomized trial, right? So how can we randomly assign these treatments? And then we'll discuss. So it shouldn't take too long. Work as a small group, so one response per group. Yes, you can erase anything on that board.
We can say like randomly generate 10 numbers and then assign those 10 numbers to students. Cause wait, hold on.
Okay, let's just these first.
No, okay, randomly
Yeah.
assign 10 numbers and then
Wait, I thought,
Then,
are we
um,
not just doing problem one?
randomly generate 10 numbers
Well, you
and
can-
assign
Just one.
You can kind of address
the students.
all of these in one false
The students
statement.
connected to the, wait, no, the students corresponding to those numbers, like
Assign
the online
one
prep,
number
and then the
for
other
every
10 would
student
have.
for
Well,
like
no.
20.
Because remember we'd have to split these equally,
Geometry.
so we'd have to put the pre-calculus students in two groups.
We're not doing two!
I'm just gonna say it over
We're not
here,
doing two!
away from
Hold on.
you.
Hey, the first one.
Yeah, we're looking at one.
I don't like
So
it.
right now,
Actually,
I don't
I like
really
you.
like
I
it.
like you.
You just wanna design a study that would, using these 20 people, regardless of the class they're in, that would compare the online versus
just
the
left.
in-person.
I think you
Thank
need to
you.
tinkle.
Guys, there's another teacher in the room. Am I not good enough for you?
No,
That's what I
I'm
thought.
just saying
Okay.
you. I'm just saying you.
It's a good question.
I'm saying,
Do we write on this one?
I'm saying he's a bad teacher.
We just run out.
No, they're doing the wrong thing.
I mean,
They're already
no,
forgetting
I
something.
said-
No, I'm not done.
Label, girl.
Mm.
There's definitely questions. Okay.
Let's see.
I'm gonna double check, Mr. Kenny.
Mm-hmm.
Jake was confused, because the next one is talking about,
So late.
Ignore the next one.
that's, okay, that's what I thought, that's what I
So
thought.
we're just on number one right now.
Assign, label.
So,
So you can say label or assign, it's fine.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's a treatment, it's technically be.
so how would you generate?
Well, but really, you're labeling
Right?
the students.
Serena, you're not
right?
ready anymore. So both sample and experiment. You have to
But-
randomize.
Hey,
design.
this is mine, not theirs.
Label, randomly
Hey, I have a
generated.
question though.
Now, there's
So, like-
one slight difference.
Oh,
What if I
specific.
randomly generated numbers like
Yes,
39,
we'll talk about it in a
42,
second.
86?
Yes, Rita,
Yeah.
yours, not ours, yours that has flaws.
Well, it should be our, we're
And
working
also-
together,
No,
right?
she doesn't
Yeah,
want
y'all
to
are
work
just
with
writing.
us. And you did
There's a
random
record
number
on there.
Don't worry, she doesn't want to work with us.
I don't like them.
Oh, you're right. It
I don't like
is
you, not
an
her.
RNG.
A random number generator?
Okay.
But that's not what that says. As soon as it's the acronym, you say and.
But I wouldn't say RNG, I would say random number generator.
I would only talk about written there is an, or is what's written is RNG. Look at that language.
Also,
I
it's
kinda
R.
like that. You know what they put a number on there?
Oh, yeah.
I don't really actually.
If it's the letters, it's always
You know what
and,
he said, talk about the quarter number out there.
Yeah.
or at least an
That
acronym.
seems so wrong.
It's B, but it,
Each two.
Okay, so how are you gonna?
it is an RNG.
Randomly assign, like generate.
And then what you have to say.
Well, so I will say this, you're actually,
Randomly
you're
assign.
close, but you're actually combining the last two things, which is why you're running into some difficulty. You're gonna use an RNG to randomly
Y'all, this is definitely wrong.
generate or select, randomly generate,
Yes.
yeah.
Generate. 20 unique numbers.
I think so.
So label, It's a small thing, but I would say label students 1 through 20. And you don't even have to do that, right? Just label.
What's the last step? Is it like compare?
But now you're saying randomly assign. Remember, what's the 3-step process? Label,
Wait, generate.
randomly generate.
Is that, oh my god.
But you're not assigning
Do we
it.
have to put randomly assigned?
So randomly generate,
Yeah, you got it.
20 students, or
Well,
10.
it should be 10, 10, so you're gonna randomly generate how many?
20. Wait, what?
How many numbers are you gonna randomly generate?
Hey,
You said 10 and 10, right?
Yeah, 20.
So
question.
you already, no, you have 20
So-
students, you're gonna randomly generate
10.
10.
You're gonna
So we're
randomly
on the
generate
right.
20 unique
Oh, okay,
numbers.
okay, I didn't get it. Okay, yeah.
So we're gonna generate
I always forget that.
Are you gonna do
Not 10
20?
students, 10.
Yes.
You don't have the number.
Okay, so you labeled each student 1 to 20, right?
Well,
So you randomly
Right,
generate
you randomly
20 unique
generate
numbers.
Oh.
So if you
How,
randomly
what are you
generate
gonna do
10
with
numbers.
those 20 students and their numbers?
Assign them
Or
to
taking
online.
shift, just choose
Is
Is
one.
it random though, if
You're not
you
even
then
doing that.
have
I don't know, I just
20
put random crap.
Randomly
random
generating
numbers
10
and now you
numbers.
pick on 10 of them, regardless of the number, putting them here, 10
But
here.
you're also missing a word.
So let's think about this,
Yeah.
okay?
Right?
What did
That's
we
why I
do,
thought
the last experiment we talked about?
originally on that.
No, so you
How did
label
we
the
do it?
students 1 to 20.
I don't
You
know.
randomly generate 10 unique
I
numbers.
thought that was last experiment we did.
Oh, you weren't here, so you wouldn't
Yes,
know.
I am, yes, I am.
We have every student 1 to 20.
Unique,
I think that's.
How do we wanna split it up?
unique
10
numbers.
and 10.
You
So
have
how
to
many
clarify
numbers
with
should
a
we
one.
generate that
Or what else
randomly,
is it, but we don't.
if,
Well,
So
wait.
randomly
No, no, no,
generated
I got a
unique
question though.
numbers.
Why is
Randomly
there
generating it from
Because
the
you
numbers.
you're trying to select half the group for
I'm
one.
trying to word this
Well,
from
I don't like writing on like
Yeah, the other
this
half.
kind of way.
So that's
like-
why it says.
You could
combine
do
like
2
with
sets
it.
of
Assign
numbers.
randomly.
Okay, so after you
Or you
randomly
could
generate,
do
what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
random number,
They're gonna get the
Right.
10
So
random
if you're not
numbers 1 to 20.
selecting, you're now,
Those 10
because remember, it's an
are going
experiment,
to
so you don't
online,
select you.
and then the remaining are going to classes.
Assign.
Does
You
that
don't have
make
to
sense?
randomly assign, you've
That's
already
the-
randomly
Because
generated.
Uh-huh.
If you
Assign those
randomly,
students.
yeah, that would be the assignment
Treat.
step. You already did label, now you're randomly generating numbers.
I keep writing on
So we
these.
do it.
But if you randomly generate 20
assign-
numbers, how does that help you?
Assign
Actually,
10 students.
right?
Good job.
Do you get where I'm going with
Yes.
this?
So it's just.
Because if you have 20,
In one.
once you
And I will
assign,
say,
it's not
you
random.
could technically
Because let's
flip
say
steps
you
3 and
randomly
4 in the
generate
sense
20
that
numbers,
you
if
assign
you say the evens go here
corresponding
and the odds go
students
here, that's not random.
to the classroom
Right.
prep
It's
course and the
random.
remaining.
If
get
you're
the
saying-
online prep
I just like
course.
put it
Pick a
like that.
number,
No, I know, I just
1
wanna
to
make sure it's
20,
clear that you can
pick
do
10
it.
of them, those 10
All right,
go
make
here,
sure you
the
put
other 10 go there.
corresponding.
Can I get everybody to pause and come over here? So let's bring it in, okay?
You do it.
So, right here, I just want to point out this 5-step process right here that we are seeing. Like, y'all have all the right ideas, but I want to make this, like, this is fantastic. The first thing, though, if we're randomly selecting or collecting a sample, randomly assigning treatments, what's the first thing you got to do? Label your students, label the people, and in this case, 1 to 20. Then number 2, we've got to
Randomly generate.
randomly generate, randomize. So randomly generate 10 unique numbers from 1 to 20 using an RNG, I like that. And then we assign the corresponding students. Now, does it have to be to the online prep course? No, it just has to be one of them. So we could do online there and then assign the remaining to classroom, or we assign the corresponding to the classroom and then the remaining to online prep courses. I love the last statement there because that's one I oftentimes do forget that you have to include. You gotta collect the data and compare the results. Make sure you have that. Okay, so let's get that written down. I think that was good to have y'all experience it a little bit. And I'm going to talk about a couple of things. So make sure you get that written down quickly and efficiently.
Is that a good example of what?
Random.
Oh, it's,
It's
So
a-
that is
If,
a regular part of a
If
FRQ question.
if
Just a
it's
part
just
or like?
random
Just a part.
thing.
Yeah.
Hey
guys. Grab a seat, write down what you need.
Oh.
Oh, on the pig.
Yes, yeah.
I feel bad for
You don't feel like you need it like Jaden, you don't have to, but
What?
I was saying I would write down, specifically I like that 5-step approach over there. That's a really strong 5-step approach. I guess for Braden's sake, I should turn the camera. Because Jaden, or Braden likes to skip class.
You post all this on Schoology?
YouTube.
Too.
Zoology.
Yeah, if you search my name, Nathan Kenny, it will pop up.
Let's get him YouTube famous.
I
Like
really
Mr.
Oh my
don't
god,
know.
oh my god, we should bot followers.
I'm not cool enough
We
like that.
should.
Are you monetized?
That'd be funny.
No.
Oh my gosh, you can be Mr. McDonald.
He has a silver
Yes. I'm not as funny as him.
Yeah.
Debatable.
You're
Debatable.
sassy. Oh wait.
You're so, like,
Well,
at least we're as
No,
racist
I'm
as
gonna
him.
lie. If you applied your sassiness
out of pocket.
to that YouTube, I promise you the numbers.
Yeah.
I'd watch
No,
that.
what would he? What
I'll
was
get
he
you-
saying today, like at the
Uh,
beginning?
I don't know. I don't
Something
want
about
to
like before we started.
know. He said he had a headache.
And
me,
orange.
And think about
Like,
if your
close that-
YouTube is
close
more
that phone.
You might
famous,
wanna write that down.
yes,
I
Yeah,
forgot
more
about that.
people will probably try to get into your AP stats.
That's true.
So think about that.
It's true, it's true. I don't know that I have enough years left in the classroom for that to be a huge concern though.
I only joined AP Bio because he has a silver play button.
Yeah, you catch on.
Is that Eric?
You have to
Yes,
be
he
careful.
does. He has
No, I'm talking about the reason she doing it.
Oh, I was about to say, you've been in that class.
Yeah, he had
I'm
it on
a
his
teacher
YouTube
there.
channel
Am I
on
not
campus.
good?
Work for you?
And he was
You
like,
did?
wait, no,
Yeah.
It's happy looking
That's
slow
right.
kayaking.
Oh my gosh, that kayaking.
It was so
Okay.
funny.
I know, right? So,
Assign the.
So
Me
please
and Peter
do
were
notice,
struggling kayaking.
assign the corresponding students
We're so
to
bad.
one course, assign the remaining to the other
We were
course.
like
You don't have to
almost-
roll.
I like
with
the
it.
went last.
That was my first time.
We were last,
Well,
like,
why
for the
would you
majority
We
of
weren't like complete last, but like
Some
we were the
people
last.
try to make their
one.
life complicated.
That would
Like, how
only make
perfect
sense if you
this
had
art
like
is.
100 and
Well, I
you
did
just
not have one
wanted
last.
100.
Correct.
Me neither. If you mess up my heart, I'm gonna, like, KMS.
Ah.
Sounds J.
Okay, so I know a few of us are still writing, so keep writing if you're doing that. But one thing I do want to point out is this. What is this random assignment accounting for in respect to this experimental design?
confounding.
Some confounding variables, right? And look at the design though. Does anyone see any small notes that are in there already that account for potential confounding?
Well, it was 20 students who have taken the SAT once, so they already make sure like that they'd only taken it one time and that they had taken it before.
She nailed it, and we need to notice that. They're probably about to yell at me about attendance. But it is great to
No, I love you
note
calling
that
this
the
rude.
only
It's amazing.
people taking this prep course have taken the SAT once. Not more than once, not 0 times, they've taken it once. Could be the number of times someone's taken the SAT be a potentially confounding factor.
Yes.
Indubitably.
Very much so. So they directly controlled for that. So that's something to notice. Now, notice in number 2, Jaden decided he's too cool to write notes. And so he already started working on number 2, but number 2 says that among the 20 volunteers, 10 are in pre-calculus, 6 are in algebra 2, and 4 are in geometry. What problem does this cause?
Well, they're at different levels in math, which
So
is
they're
like
gonna have
half of
different
the SAT.
scores.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a confounding variable.
So the question then becomes, hey, is it the prep course or is it the level of mathematics that they're in, right? So Jaden, if you can move really quickly, I just want to show this.
Oh my god.
Here
Right.
it is.
Jaden.
Ew.
Golly.
Oh.
So here's what we have, right? So this is randomly split into groups, right? There's a whole lot of improvement here, which I did make notes on your page. I did convert those SAT differences to ACT roughly. So a 100-point difference on the SAT would be roughly 6 points on the ACT, just to put it into perspective.
That's a lot.
So like a 50 would be roughly 3-point increase, things like that. So just to put in perspective what that's helping with. Now, here is a dot plot for this information. And so I want us to notice right here, right? Here's the people that did the SAT prep online. Here's what did it in the classroom. Is there convincing evidence, you think, that those who did it online improved more than those who did it in the classroom?
I mean, yeah, because like the top 5 are all
Yeah,
online.
but if they have more people.
But
more
hold on, let me
subjects-
ask you, let me rephrase this. Not rephrase it, let me say this again. Is there convincing evidence?
No.
No.
Is there evidence?
Yes.
Yes, right? The lowest came from classroom prep, the highest came from online. In fact, this mean is definitely higher, right? And so there is evidence, but is that statistically significant? Is that
No.
convincing? Not right now, it's not. I don't see enough evidence there.
Are there circles, triangles, and squares?
There sure might be. Let's go look to see what that is in a second. What?
Squid game?
Squid
No. So let me ask you this though. What was a potentially confounding factor again?
They could have like not done the coursework if they were on the online class. Or
That's true, but what was a potentially confounding factor identified in this study?
math level.
The math level, right? So let's re-look at this. Is there another slide? Okay.
All the geometry students.
Alright, coming back. So right here, to give a little bit of a key, and I think this is on, yeah, look at page 13 really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
So if you look at page 13, all of these triangles are my pre-calculus students. All of these circles are my Algebra 2 students. And all of my squares are my geometry students. So for every single pre-cal student, online did better. For every single Algebra 2 student, save maybe one, the online did better. For every geometry student, the online did better. Is that stronger evidence, the same level of evidence, or weaker evidence?
Stronger.
Stronger. So what we need to do is called blocking. What did we say was the potentially confounding factor? The what? The math level, right? And so I look at my math level. I've got pre-calculus. And how many students did I have? 10. I had Algebra 2, and I think there were 6 of those. And then there was geometry, and we had 4 of those, okay? Now, I want us to recognize that's the potentially confounding factor, but also, are these groups similar? Like, are these students similar to each
Oh
other?
my god, it's strata.
Yeah.
In terms of what we're interested
Say that one more time.
Strata.
It's kind of similar to strata. Now, stratified random sampling is for observational studies, but what was the whole point of strata? They were
Homogeneous.
homogeneous.
Yeah.
Yep. And so they're homogeneous in respect to the potentially confounding variable. So homogeneous in respect to potentially confounding variable. And then what do we do with those groups?
Randomly select
From the-
a specific number from each group and compare.
Close. Think about that language. I'm going to repeat what Serena said roughly. You said randomly select and compare. So compare's good.
Compare, okay.
Randomly
Randomly
assign. Remember, with experiments, we randomly assign to treatments, right? So you're 100% right, and you have the right idea. I just want to be clear on that language. Select means to sample. Assign means to assign to treatments.
Okay.
So
I thought we were doing it like after the experiment was done. So wouldn't that be observing?
I see what you're saying. Let's pretend like we're going back to the beginning of the experiment.
Okay.
Okay, so this would be, because realistically, how likely is it that it perfectly split 5 and 5, 3 and 3? No, right? So this is known as a randomized block design. And so the blocks are homogeneous in respect to potentially confounding variable, and Peter nailed it earlier when he said it's like strata. We want to think stratified random sampling for observational studies, blocking for experimental studies, right, or experiments. So we have our online and we have our classroom, and half from each block are going to go to each treatment. So how many are going to go to online?
5,
And how many are going to go to classroom?
5,
How many of these are going to go to online?
3.
And these are going to, and 2, and 2. I know that gets messy, but the idea is I take my homogeneous block, and remember it needs to be homogeneous in respect to the potentially confounding variable, and I randomly assign to the treatments. Okay, so in a completely randomized, or in a randomized block design, we identify blocks groups that are homogeneous in respect to the potentially confounding variable, and then we randomly assign from each block to the treatments.
So how would we put this in like one of those things up there?
I already done with you erased it.
He didn't erase it, he just pulled the thing over it.
You erased part of it.
Yeah. Randomly assign. So what I would do, Serena, I will say this, I haven't seen, I'd have to go back and check, but I don't think I've seen an AP free response question that has you do that block design and like describe the whole thing. But what I would do is I would completely describe the process for one block, and then I would say repeat this process for this block and this block. What they usually do on the AP exam is they ask you to identify a potentially confounding factor to block on.
So could you say like, if you're doing this, could you say like label students in pre-cal 1 to 10?
Correct.
Okay.
Randomly generate 5 unique numbers, assign those students to the classroom. The other half get online. Repeat this process for the Algebra 2 and geometry, except you'll use 6 and 4 or something like that. But again, they usually only ask you to ever actually go through this process with a completely randomized design. The blocking is more about, they'll ask you to identify the groups to block on.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I didn't erase anything. Oh, I'm so sorry. The 2 letters.
He's gonna shoot that.
Yeah. Sorry, I gotta put this over here for Braden because he's skipping class. So, split them into tiers and do the same within each tier, right? So, yes, that is the idea of blocking.
Jaden can't count.
It's okay.
You put 1 to 10 for both of them.
It's okay.
So we also just copy.
All right. He was just trying to sprint through things. So, here's the thing, and this is what we need to pay attention to. What's the benefit of blocking?
It allows you to get like data from each subgroup of people in the population.
So it's going to filter out.
Filter out confounding variables.
It's going to filter out confounding variables. It's going to allow you to more directly assess. Remember also how with stratified random sampling, it reduced the variability, right? Look again here. Isn't this way less variable than this, or way less spread out? And so by reducing the spread, you know what it makes it easier to do? Find...
The median?
Patterns.
Say that again. Significance. It's easier to find statistical significance. When we reduce that spread, that's the beauty of blocking. When we reduce our spread, it's going to make it easier to find statistical significance. Yes, Nate? Oh, you're just agreeing? Gotcha. So again, the idea of blocking is that it's going to make it easier to find statistical significance. Okay? So it makes it easier to find statistical significance.
Are you gonna like give
Okay.
me some, or just like tell me?
I think so, but I think it's just specific.
So I'm not going to rewrite this next part because I've already written it on the board. But how can we determine which variable might be best for blocking? How do we determine which variable to look at for blocking, Jaden? Not actually, because I'm just calling it, huh? We want the block to be homogeneous in respect to a
Potentially confounding variable.
potentially confounding variable. Because here's the thing, guys, hear me on this. Could I make blocks about male versus female?
Yeah.
Yeah? But would those blocks really show me a difference in their scores? Probably not, maybe. The level of math that they're in, that could make a huge difference. Right?
It has to be reasonable. We can't just be like, well, we're both putting people with different eye levels basically off of that.
Correct. Like there's a million variables out there, but it needs to be something that is seriously potentially confounding. You need to block on something that is seriously potentially confounding.
So they give you the information.
Maybe it's
on
required
the
for
AP
rehearsal
exam.
today.
Hold on, y'all both talk, hold on. Y'all talk about that later. What'd you say, Michael?
So so you use the information from the actual text. You don't like make things up on the AP exam, right? Like you
I have at least one AP free response question that involves blocking so that we can look at it.
So does it have to be exactly from like? the
You
question?
can, I will say this, you can find more than one, but try to base it on something that's super logical. Okay? So it needs to be something that's super logical. Yes,
What do
sorry.
you think the best set of homework would be to do for preparation for the check your or demonstrate your understanding
So
tomorrow?
one, definitely make sure you do the progress check if you are gonna take the time. Two, what I might do if I were you is I would look at each of the questions, maybe not do all of them, but look at each of the questions and say, do I think I can do this?
Okay.
If you feel like you can do it without actually doing it, then don't waste the time.
Alright,
Does that make sense?
indubitably.
And then do what you can with what you got. What you got, Snack?
I forgot to get it yesterday, but can I get the first one?
Yes, the extra fair model, yes. Okay. Yes.
Do we have
I'll
to
print
correct
that
that before tomorrow?
Say it one more time.
Do we have to correct the for?
Not correct it, you need to do the experiments
Okay.
before tomorrow, and then corrections before the test.
Can I write mine on a different sheet? Because my old sheet is just.
Yeah, me too.
No, the experiments is on the back.
No, I meant like when we have to
The
change
corrections.
the original.
Because
Like
it's full.
yeah.
Let me
like,
print a
I
second
can't-
one out for you.
You should just like make them bigger.
No.
How?
Then
Maybe
like,
get a bigger
like
sheet
so
of paper.
why? What's the, like?
And then one thing in your notebook. Alright, look at here. Okay, so what
Make
is
the oval smaller.
we're gonna skip that, I don't care about that. So what is the difference between blocking and stratifying? We've already hinted at this. Blocking is for
Potentially.
experiments and assigning treatments. Stratifying is for observational studies and selecting or sampling, right? They both have homogeneous groups, but blocking will help us reduce what?
Confounding.
Confounding. Stratifying will help us reduce bias. Yes,
So what's the equivalent for cluster?
there's not one.
That's your question?
Good question.
Oh, good. Hey, let's go. That's like A tier.
Wasn't that an
It's definitely not
B tier?
S tier.
B
It's
tier?
definitely not S tier.
B tier?
Probably. Okay. So, matched pairs design, okay? So, really quickly for matched pairs design, matched pairs is a type of blocking. So let me say that one more time. Matched pairs is a type of blocking. But how large do you think the blocks might be?
What's a pair?
It's a pair.
2.
In a matched pairs design, it is blocking with 2. Okay? So let me give you an example of why matched pairs might be really beneficial. Let's say that we are testing an ointment cream for eczema, right? Okay? Who's going to be more similar, is there anybody more similar to your skin other than yourself?
Your family?
Yeah.
Other than is there someone more similar to your own skin than yourself? I should say it that way.
Your twin.
Maybe a twin. Okay? So, legitimately, first off, like if I have a twin, would it make more sense for me to compare two different treatments to the twins or me to Nate?
Twins.
To the twins, right? Like the twins are going to have more similar skin. Or you could even do, hey, I'm going to do the lotion on one arm and then use the other lotion on the other arm. That's a matched pairs design because again, whose skin is more similar to mine than me? The answer is nobody.
The mirror?
That doesn't even make sense.
No, that doesn't make sense. There's no skin there, bro. Okay, my point though, here, so
Doppelganger.
really quickly, matched pairs is a type of blocking, when it is really helpful, or you have two really similar subjects, right? That can reduce spread more than anything else. Okay, and we'll look at some examples of matched pairs later in the year. I'm going to save an activity for later in the year once we learn more about inferential statistics. Yes,
What about like exercise science?
what about it?
Because I know it's using that a lot now. Like they'll have
Every
a
single
subject do one treatment on like their left arm and one on the other arm and then measure.
Yeah, they can do that. I mean, like, and in general, like, would it make sense to compare someone who has never worked out in their life to someone who has been running every day for the last 10 years? If we're talking about cardiovascular health. No, that wouldn't make sense. But what if I were to take the 2 healthiest people and pair them together? And then the next 2 most physically fit and pair them together. And then the next 2 most physically fit.
So like age groups kind of.
So maybe something with age groups, things like that. So in general though, it's an extreme form of blocking that they are really similar in respect to some potentially confounding factor. Okay? Serena, you look like you need some help over there. All right.
Wait, can I see that?
So,
Where you guys get that?
all right.
Walmart.
Last thing before we do some AP free response questions. Okay?
I forgot about that.
So, right here, what is the scope of inference? The scope of inference is what we can actually make an inference about. If I reduce bias, what can I make an inference about? From the sample to the population. If I reduce confounding, what can I make an inference about?
Cause and effect.
Cause and effect. What if I can reduce both bias and confounding?
You can do both.
I can do both. And that's what this is saying right here. Were the individuals randomly selected from a population? If yes, we can make an inference about the population. Okay? If the answer is no, I can't make an inference about the population.
Then why'd you put a check mark?
Oh my gosh, this is addicting.
What it, oh yeah, that.
Uh,
It gets
that's the
worse
yes.
with it.
Oh.
It's-
This is
Right.
really confusing.
That one.
This chart is really confusing.
So,
Okay.
hold on. But hold on.
Exactly, no, it helps
Hey,
so much.
right here.
Mhm.
Notice horizontally is the individuals were randomly selected from a population. If the answer is yes, I can make an inference about the population. What's along the top were the individuals randomly assigned to groups. Okay? That's where the no is, Sprig, right? And because it's a no for random assignment, I'm not checking inference about cause and effect. But if yes, they were randomly assigned, can I make an inference about cause and effect? Yes, Mr. Kenny. Great.
It's a Punnett square.
Okay, so notice this gives us a kind of breakdown for some important things. Most experiments are going to fall in this region where yes, we randomly assigned, but no, we did not randomly select. If we can have both, that's awesome. But you know how realistic it is to have both?
Unrealistic.
Unrealistic, super wicked rare, okay? And then if we randomly select, the inference is about the population. But if we did not randomly assign, we cannot do cause and effect. And some observational studies, plainly, they suck. We don't do either, so we don't really make any inferences.
So not having the two would be bad experiment for.
It'd be a bad study design for sure. Okay? Now, sometimes, unfortunately, it's all we've got. Like, legitimately, sometimes it's all we've got, and so we do what we can with what we have. But it's not ideal. Does that make sense? Okay. Let me check something really quickly.
Yeah, I gotta leave early actually.
Too bad, bye. Okay,
I have a
so-
doctor's appointment.
Yeah, I actually have to go as well.
I have an
No,
ear
you don't.
infection scheduled
Stanley, I
have to walk my
for.
kid.
Alright, so guys, I want y'all to examine this, read through the directions, examine these 4 study designs, figure out what type of inferences you can make. We'll talk about them in just a minute.
I can't read that.
Can you?
It's on the paper!
It is?
Yes!
That's a lot. I'm not reading.
Yeah, I'm not reading a lot.
Would you lights off?
So like, right here, what is this like?
Touch yours.
No, so volunteer would not be randomly selected.
Are we gonna close these out
Randomly
ourselves?
selected would be like the random number
Like
generator.
you're just looking at something
Yeah,
like
this is a lot.
This is definitely a lot.
You
could register. Yeah, it would be like putting names in.
No.
Random number
So
generator.
why
Awkward
volunteers
meeting.
our work if you don't have
You got something?
You know what my mom says, if you wouldn't do it yourself.
You know what your mom says is you run your mouth a lot. What?
Oh! Now what?
Now actually read something and try to figure it
I
out.
can't read.
Mr. Kennedy, question.
I forgot my glasses at
Surprised
home.
they didn't ask. I'm learning. I feel like I was.
Like, I actually can't read right now.
So, you know, UA, I don't know if you ever get the emails.
The entire
part of
semester is
the
crazy.
study, fill out the survey, it's all volunteer, so like all it's biased, so like.
Why would you
how do
raise
they-
your GPA
How's that
just for
actually
studying?
helpful to them?
Usually it's experiments, and two, sometimes you just
Okay.
can't randomly select.
And also, incentives, how does that look like?
Well, if it's an experiment, it doesn't,
It doesn't.
because it's not where it's biased.
Yeah.
But that's where a lot of studies you do have to look at,
No, literally.
a lot of studies you do have to look at those caveats, they'll have to declare, oh,
What type of
we
music?
did this, right?
If it's like-
Classical, rap.
If it's like lo-fi, like low-key.
Yeah. I don't know, I can't listen to music.
No, rave music is
I
the,
was
is
it
the goal.
depends on the
Like
person.
rave music actually lets me be concentrated.
I like classical, like or
You
like
like video
piano
music?
levels and
No,
things.
the best music for studying is when it doesn't have any lyrics. That's why I
Yeah,
like it.
it doesn't matter what
Free response.
Because it doesn't mess with your head.
My favorite's like.
You tell them.
Like the piano covers of like Mitski or
we don't
something.
do that
I
one.
like those ones.
I just listen to.
Alright.
I know the lyrics, so that doesn't help me. So I just like.
So
I
does
just
that mean all of us
like
have
those
finished
stimulating
numbers
if I
1
don't
through
know.
4, figuring out what type of inference we can
That's why I
make?
just put up
Because it was not a
reading.
circle. You were supposed to look at all 4 of them.
I'm reading that for you.
And for each design, suppose the mean GPA for those who listen to music while studying was significantly lower than the mean who didn't listen to music. What can we conclude? The
Listening to music.
question, well, but look at the designs again. The question about what can we conclude is what kind of inference can we make? Get all the students in your AP Stats class to participate in the study, ask them whether or not they study with music on, and divide them into 2 groups based on their answer to this question. What type of inference can I make based on this?
Nothing,
Not much, why not?
because it's not like a sample of a population.
So it's not, well, it is a sample, it's not a,
Random.
It's not random.
it's not a random
Oh, yeah.
sample,
That's what I
right?
said.
Is that what you said? I
Yes.
couldn't tell. Multiple of you talked at the same time, I'm sorry.
It's like
Random,
funny.
random sample, it's not there.
It's also not like.
Mr. Kenny, can you reflect block attendance?
Dang it, I even said that earlier, didn't I? Yes. Random assignment, is it there?
No.
So what kind of inference can we make?
Nada.
Not really anything. Not much of an inference at all. Number 2, select a random sample of students from your school to participate in a study. Ask them whether or not they study with music on and divide them into 2 groups based on their answer to this question. What kind of inference can you make?
Population.
Well, you can make an inference from the sample to the population. That's it. That's the only type of inference you can make. So when they ask, hey, what can you conclude? What are they asking for? The type of
Inference.
inference. Please make a note of that. Underline that word conclude and make sure you know, hey, they're asking about what type of inference I can make.
So what is the best study on this out of the 4?
What do you think the best one is?
I think it's 3.
Okay.
Because then you like are comparing
3?
everyone who's doing the same work.
Okay, 3 is not a random sample.
Say that again.
3 is not a random sample.
So like here's the thing, in study 3, what's the only group I can make this an inference about? What's the only
AP
population?
statistics.
I can only make a conclusion about that AP Stats class.
But
right?
like, if you did the whole school, then their GPA is gonna change more.
Right, but look at what we did to account for that. We selected a random sample from the school. So here, I can't make any prediction about the school. Here, who can I make a prediction about?
The school.
The school, and I can make an inference about cause and effect. So Serena, you are correct, that's 3, and it depends on what you want to know. Let's remind ourselves of that. If all I want to know is cause and effect for that AP Stats class, then 3 is perfect. But if I want to know about cause and effect for the entire school, then I have to randomly sample and randomly assign, and now I can make an inference
I
about
feel
the
like that
entire
wouldn't
school.
be a good study though, because students will be in different classes with different difficulties, so of course their GPA is gonna be different.
That's why you use blocking.
Bro,
So here's the thing, well, but hold on, but here's the thing, and this is what you gotta remember with that. What can filter out the confounding variable there?
randomness.
Well, just random assignment period, right? Blocking can do even better, but we need to recognize you are 100% right that that is a concern, but that's the point of randomization, is that random sampling will reduce the bias and random assignment will reduce the confounding, okay? And again, it depends on what population you want to know about. I only want to know about AP Stats kids, boom, there it is. I only want to know about, or I want to know about everybody in the school, got to do number 4.
Which one do you want us to do
Huh?
on this thing?
That's a good question. So to help you prepare for the, well, we only have 5 minutes left, so we're only going to get started. But to help you prepare for the demonstrate your understanding tomorrow, I want you to look at 2007 number 3, okay? Because notice, what is, actually let's just say this to help establish, 2013 number 2, what type of study is 2013 number 2?
Observational.
It's observational, there's no treatments. We're literally just, if you read through it quickly, and I know it's quick, but if you're conducting a, well, first off it says survey to estimate the proportion of students who are satisfied with the appearance of campus, there's no treatment, it's a survey, it's an observational study, right? Tomorrow it's something more about experiments. So number 2 literally talks about a randomized block experiment in 2A. So take the time you have right now. I know we haven't talked about an AP free response question. This is not consequential for your grade. Do your best to answer the questions of 2007 number, is it 3? 2007 number 3, and we will discuss it first thing tomorrow to help us understand experimental
This
design
will
a
be
little
on our
better.
test or our.
That level of question will not be on the DYU. That level of question will be on the test. But we're going to do this one and at least 2 more before your test. Okay? For the most part, yeah. That and the DYU is what we're doing tomorrow. Yes, sir.
I'm confused. Do you want us to answer these?
I want you to do 2007 number 3.
If you can test on the AP exam, right?
Huh?
Wait, no. Do you have to?
It's gonna be handwritten on the AP exam. this
Yeah,
year.
I forgot it said that on the thing. But the multiple choice are difficult, right?
Multiple choice will be on the computer. Hey guys, we still have 3 minutes. Go ahead and start on this. Make sense out of it. Not you, the goofballs packing it up named Nate and Jay.